Um, so thank you all for coming. So pretty sure majority of y'all have already taken this course, but if you have not already, 1331 is probably one of the major or beginner courses that you will take as an engineer in general. And so it's this very essential course that you will need later on for a couple classes like Biothermodynamics and then Numerical Analysis. It basically goes over the basic concepts and functions within MATLAB. So covering things like logicals, conditionals, for loops, while loops, phase diagrams, and all those things. And a couple things to expect going through the week. You will have weekly mastering assignments, Zybooks, OR assignments, and then working on the NE project with your teammates. So similarly to 1100, how y'all had a project, you will have one with 1331 as well. It has changed over the semesters. So now we're doing app designs now instead of just solely working in MATLAB through the functions and collaborating that to one main script. So there's main 4 professors who are teaching this course: Dr. Aksu, Burleson, Kowal, and Luna. But all those professors are great. You really can't go wrong with any of the professors. And then my biggest tip for taking this course, especially if you are taking this course right now, you'll know that coming to office hours is probably the most important thing that you can do when taking this course. So they're offered throughout the whole week. Maybe your TA would also even host them over the weekends, but very important to get questions answered, getting help on the MAs and all of that. Again, also establishing a good connection and communication with your UTA as well. So that goes to regard for getting help for any project or getting help in anything outside of this classroom as well. Lastly is to come to class, because all the materials, you can't really learn that outside of the class. So it's very important that you attend the lectures. Okay, with that, next course.
So before I talk about this course, I did just kind of want to talk about the structure of our PowerPoint today for maybe those who kind of came in late. So if you didn't already notice, we're going to kind of go through all required biomedical engineering courses in the order that you would typically take them. So for the first couple classes, if you're a junior, you probably have already taken these classes. But then once we get to the end, we'll start going over bioinstrumentation, Capstone, genomics and proteomics and stuff like that. And then we would like you guys maybe to have your questions until the end. We'll have a Q&A session. And then also too, if you have if you're someone that has a pro tip that we didn't talk about, definitely bring that up also. And then also we'll talk just a little bit at the end about mental health resources and sort of keeping that up. So the next class, I think a lot of us, I took this class my sophomore year, Intro to Biomedical Engineering. It's a 1 credit hour class, and they basically introduce you to all the different aspects of biomedical engineering, specifically what goes on in our biomedical engineering department. So each week, I don't know if it's still on Fridays. I think it's kind of infamously on Friday mornings, if I'm not mistaken. It's an hour lecture from a different professor from our biomedical engineering department, and they just kind of talk about what research they do and sort of how their lab operates. And then I believe it's going to be in person next semester. So after that professor sort of talks to you about their lab, you will go in groups of 5 to 6 to go actually tour their lab. Usually a grad student kind of takes care of that. And then you get to actually see for about 10 minutes, hands-on what they do in the lab. And then you're expected to write a 1-page report on it due the following week. It's a really easy A, and it's a great way to get exposed to all the different research and stuff going on. If you haven't already talked to Met Nikai, he's very big on undergraduate research. And especially if that's something that you're interested in, this is a really good class because you'll get exposed to all the different research going on in our department. One thing I will say is Yasmin Akai is not really in the business of showing you your grade until it's on your transcript. So just don't ask her. I don't know if you can be, like, if she'll tell you, because she's kind of like a busy lady. But if you just do the reports, you'll get an A. Like, it's not really something to worry about. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that class. So then the next class is organic chemistry. This, I think, is sort of an infamous class. It can be a weed out class. Don't be too scared. First, you go over general chemistry, and then you learn, you kind of learn how to name certain compounds like as you go. The biggest part of this class are the reactions and the mechanisms that go on between different organic molecules. So I would definitely study those. Like, I guess it'll make more sense when you get into the class, but luckily, since obviously BioEs are not the only people that have to take organic chemistry, usually the class is huge. So I believe if you're taking it next semester, you're going to take it with Dr. Bean. That's who I took it with. Some people have an issue with her. I really didn't. She's been teaching this class forever. She knows her stuff. She has tons of, like, her notes are up. There's tons of practice exams out there. Additionally, there's a workshop. If you don't know what a workshop is, it's basically a 1 credit hour class that supplements the lecture. So if you are anticipating this class being really hard for you, maybe Gen Chem was really hard for you and chemistry is just not really your thing, I would definitely try to get into this workshop because it fills up really quickly. And they just kind of provide extra worksheets and extra time, like, carved out in your schedule to like, get a better grasp on the material. The American Chemical Society, or ACS, has lots of practice exams and stuff. They also host practice exams. Like, you go into this big lecture hall, and then people that did well in the class, like people part of ACS at U of H who did well in the class, will go through an old exam of usually Dr. Bean's step by step. So that was really helpful for me. And I would say the biggest thing that helps me do well in the class was to just do it. It's not enough to just learn the material. You just constantly have to practice it and apply it. Otherwise, you're never going to get it, because the exam is all application of knowledge. It's not like defining anything, or you just have to do it. So
Another thing to add, because it is all application, I think the biggest tip would be to create a reaction sheet for yourself. So, like, knowing the mechanism for the reaction that you're learning, knowing its stereochemistry or regiochemistry, and then I say give yourself an example of, like, knowing how an actual reaction looks.
and then in the lab, it's also going to go back in person. I'm pretty sure it's still a 6-hour lab. I don't know if you guys have actually, like, tried building your schedule. I will say, typically, like, it never took me all 6 hours, but it does, it's a lot of time. Like, it's kind of a tiring lab, but basically this lab, it's pretty similar to Gen Chem. You just end up applying what you're learning in lecture into the lab space. Oh, Quinn says it might be 4 hours. That's good, because 6 hours was rough. So again, similar to Gen Chem, you write a report on what you did. I will say these lab reports are more structured. So just beware of that. They're going to take more time. Okay, so maybe it is 4 hours now. That's good. The 6-hour thing was rude, in my opinion. But so you have a weekly lab report. There's something different from Gen Chem is there's 2 midterms and a final. You also, Dr. Bean is the professor for this lab, but really she's not involved with it. It's the TA. So Yeah, some tips I have, like, I don't know if this has changed. I did take this in 2019. When I took it, there were no lab partners. You should still try to take it with friends and do your experiments near them. Like, you will have to have your own data, but it does help to know the people that are around you, because like if you do a reaction and your whatever's in your glass turns out like brown and the people next to you have like a clear liquid, like something went wrong, right? So um another tip I have is to take the pre-lab seriously. It's kind of a lot of work, but if you know what you're doing before you get in there, one, you're not going to take off 4 hours, and two, it's just going to help you better understand the actual data you're getting and what you're expected to get, instead of just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, being like, I hope this is right. And then you go back and you calculate your percent yield or whatever, and it's like garbage. Like, it'll help prevent that if you actually focus on the pre-lab and do it well. Um, Last thing is, organic glassware is really expensive. And at the end of the semester, the TAs will go through your drawer, and anything that's like broken or cracked, you will have to go to the basement and buy from Fleming, like right then and there. So literally, like, they will tell you that, but people tend to forget. Like, just be super careful with your glassware.
I may add for Ergo too. So Bean is a good professor, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you happen to take it later, or you happen to get like Dr. Zaitsev or any of the other professors who are a little bit harder to follow, uh, investing in a resource like Clutch Prep is not that bad, because I had to take it twice, and literally the only thing that saved my grade was getting that extra resource. So it was almost like a workshop. And I took it during summer, and like I did really, really well. I pulled really high scores, and that made me get the C minus that I needed. So yeah.
Okay, next up, we have Cal 3. So it's pretty much like your traditional Cal 1 and Cal 2 class in terms of structure. So a couple of topics that we'll go over is like vectors, surfaces, partial derivatives, maximum and minimum, integrals, and all of the rest. So same thing, you'll have like weekly quizzes, EMCFs, and then pop quizzes during class. It'll also have a lab section for just extra praxis and then occasional quizzes. I took with Dr. West when I was doing this class, but I also know that Dr. Weber is also a very good professor. So again, you can't go wrong with either professor. And then just making sure to stay on top of your assignments and knowing you have multiple attempts for the quizzes. And so use that as the practice for the exams, because those do reflect pretty much how the exams are going to look like. And so you can use that to your advantage to making sure you understand the material. And yeah, also use the lab classes to ask any questions that you have typically.
So biomedical processes, this one's taught by Dr. Shipkoplias. Pretty much you will be using MATLAB, just in a range of applications from, I mean, just different first principles topics, from basic reaction kinematics to magnetism and all of that. So all the stuff that you learn from like physics 1, 2, and like basic chemistry, you're pretty much just going to be getting real life or almost real life applications. He'll be giving you like a paper to read from. And he'll discuss all of these concepts, so don't be scared, because it's like a pretty broad class. But at the end of the day, you're going to be kind of applying all of those concepts into solving problems. If anything, I'd be like, get sharp with your MATLAB right now. Also, like, learn what the old 45 function does. It's going to be really helpful. Hint, hint. That's like the first practice test that you're going to have that. So if like it's been like a year since you took like anything to do with MATLAB, I would say like your best friend that you can get right now is to get familiar with MATLAB. Maybe do some of the old MA assignments that you had at the beginning, because that's what's going to help you. When I took it with Sergey like last semester, I thought it was like all of the concepts that are like the kinematics, etc. If you forgot, he will kind of go over them again. So as long as you're paying attention and you actually like, when he gives you a research paper, to actually read it, not just for decoration and anything like that, you're going to be pretty fine. Because I was scared when I heard like magnetism and all of that. I was like, I did well in physics too, but I'm not that secure in my skills. He'll go over that in the PowerPoint, so I wouldn't be too scared about that. What I would say though is definitely do be polishing your MATLAB, because that's what's going to be like the main thing that you're going to be doing. And also don't miss class. He's got like amazing jokes and sarcasm. Why should you miss it? But also like, this is where he's going to explain a lot of things. Like sometimes he would do this thing where he would like do a whole derivation and in class, and then like whenever he uploaded the PowerPoint slides, he would not include the derivation. So go to class. You're probably going to enjoy it a lot. What else? Yeah, just the MATLAB stuff. Also, just from experience, I guess nobody told you, but test 1, test 2, and your final test are going to be very, very similar. So when you get that first practice test, that might be like a little bit challenging, please make sure to do your best on it. And if I was you and I had extra time, I would invest in like actually getting it right, because the next tests are going to be like almost like that. So that's the key to getting like a really, really good grade. That, and just stay on top of your business, just don't procrastinate, and that's how you're going to be okay with the MATLAB code, and it's going to be a fairly decent class.
I also wanted to say he offers an extra credit project called the Super Project. Do the Super Project. It's hard. It's a hard project, but do it, because it's very like relevant. Honestly, it's the first time in my experience with the major that I was given something that like actually seemed like it would be useful to like the real industry. And he gives you extra credit for it. It puts you on his good list. If you're looking for a letter of recommendation, he will not give you a letter of recommendation unless you've done the Super Project. And it's the kind of project, yeah, it's the kind of project that you can put on your resume. So do the Super Project, do the Super Project. I started it, I didn't finish it. I wish I had like gone all the way through and finished that Super Project. So please do that.
Even if it doesn't give you credit, you want to be on that good list. Like I didn't get credit, but I hope he still like loves me or whatever. You know? All right, facts.
All right, next up we have circuits. So this is one of the other weed up classes that you will have to take as a BME. Definitely difficult, but not to say it's not impossible. Just needs to put in a lot more work to do well in this class. And so things that we'll cover like resistors, voltage sources, and then main concepts such as Ohm's law, Kirchhoff's law, NVM, MCM, Thevenin and Norton, and superpositioning. So throughout the semester, you'll be given 4 random quizzes, but you'll be notified of it. And I also believe it's 2 exams and then a final. All those are going to be, or just the midterms are going to be on Saturdays at 9 a.m. unfortunately. So next fall, I believe the 2 professors that are open are Dr. Shadak and Dr. Ramachandran. I've not heard of the second professor, but I know Dr. Shadak is a pretty good professor. But if you're also looking to take it with Trombetta, I believe he's only spring. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of those professors. So yeah, if you do need additional help, workshop is always open to y'all to take. Highly recommending, and if you need any extra practices, the facilitators help you condense the information into an understandable way, and also provide you resources to just understand the concepts better. And then you also have someone to reach out to if you do need that additional help. They also have all of the materials, so all the notes, exams, quizzes, like online for y'all to access. So definitely use that to your advantage in terms of like getting the practice you need before taking the exams. Lastly is, I found this channel when I was taking this course. I highly recommend it because they go over concepts that are covered in the course. So like more difficult ones such as superpositioning, NVM, and then Thevenin and Norton. They go into those concepts really well, including like what it is, how to use it, and then examples of what to do.
Okay, biochemistry is also a class. Well, Dr. Scott calls it a weed out class for med school. It sucks that a lot of us aren't even going to med school, but it's not. It's you just really have to prepare. They have it's an okay class. It seems intimidating. It's not. It's just a lot of chemistry. Well, applied in biology, as you can tell. But yeah, they have two things you would want to do. Homeworks, their homeworks, quizzes, and I think 4 exams during the semester, including the final. Homeworks are conceptual, but he doesn't take a grade for them right now, so they're not graded, but they're very helpful because the quizzes that you do on the weekends, and you can do them on your own, but they do require lockdown. They need they're on the homework. So like it is important you do the homework. And then she has like the TA has recitation on Fridays. So they explain all the homework and everything. And then the quizzes are like easy 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, even 10 out of 10s. So that's a good grade. He makes you do a turning point. Get ready to cough up those $20 because he makes you buy it. But the participation is a grade. So you have to do the turning point if you want to get like 10% of the grade. The rest is your exams. Those are not based on the homeworks. Those are just memorization from the presentations. He does go overboard with it sometimes because he'd ask you how old the Earth was in the first exam, or like how old the first fossil that we had found was, or something like that. It was crazy. So like make sure you get those presentations down really, really, really well. He will ask you the most craziest specific things. Also, make a reactions sheet. I haven't come across any reactions yet, but I think there will be soon. Start learning all 20 amino acids. There's short names like the 3-letter abbreviations and the 1-letter abbreviation right from the beginning of the semester. Because for us, what he did was he introduced the topic a week before the exam, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll be on the exam." And then you were like, sort of like, start learning it early, start learning it right from the beginning because you'll need it. And then keep it in your mind because it will be coming in every exam, and just pay attention to like all the little details. Don't be afraid to like be like, oh, that might not come because it's so small. Who's ever going to remember it? He will ask you that. Just be prepared to learn. It's not intimidating. It'll just need a lot of work. That's all.
Yeah, and I also would like to add some things for this class. I'm currently like retaking this class with Scott too, we should say, because last semester I took it with Dr. Yu, I believe that was his last name. I'm sorry. And I believe that Scott class is way easier than my last professor, just because I feel like, well, like Scott has homeworks and has quizzes and tests and the clicker and everything. But my last professor only had just like the test and a final test that was cumulative. So I will say that it was really hard for me, and that's why I had to drop the class and retake it with Scott. And I will say, like, I'm gonna be honest, Scott is not the best professor because his slides, his lectures are not great, but the tests are really easy because you just need to memorize the slides and you will get an A or B on the test. So my advice is to take this professor. And also to learn the amino acids, I would recommend to do flashcards.
You can do flashcards, but there's also an app. I don't remember the name of the app. If someone messages me in GroupMe, I will find it for you later, but that's what helped me. I had a phone app, and when I was bored for like 5 minutes, I would just play on it, and it helps you like memorize it.
Yeah, I think it's just called amino acids.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Anki or Quizlet. It was literally like in the iTunes app. But yeah.
Martin.
Give me 1 second. Okay, so engineering math. It pretty much follows the formula for other math classes you have. I know they're all pretty much done through CASA. And if you've gotten all the way through Calc 3, it's going to feel fairly familiar with the way that you do the quizzes, the way that you attend class, the way that lectures structured. So yeah, it's not too bad, I'd say. So again, what you're going to be going through over differential equations, transformations, linear algebra. I'd say the first part, a lot of it's mostly differential, and then the second half is going to be linear algebra. Linear algebra will carry over to later classes, especially numerical analysis. I think it's a good idea to try to get a good understanding of these materials now, especially linear algebra. Anything having to do with matrices and transformations of them, you're going to see later on. So I'd say definitely try to apply yourself onto that. And let's see here. So yeah, Dr. Edgin, West, Dr. John Ryan. I feel like professors are usually homogenous when they have their teaching, like the way that they teach certain classes, especially later on once you get into the junior, senior levels to where you're pretty much only having one professor that teaches the classes. So you can use services like Rate My Professor and all that. But anyways, ultimately they're all going to be pretty good. So some tips: take the workshop. Any of the SEP workshops, really, take them. If you have the option to, 1 credit hour, you get credit for studying for the classes, like absolutely take them. Like any math class, really, any math class, you just practice the problems, try to understand how to get those problems done, just keep on practicing them. That's how you're going to study for any of these math classes. Symbolab, Desmos, definitely using any kind of software like that. Especially, I love MATLAB. I mean, sorry, Symbolab. Symbolab has gotten me through a lot of just quick calculations. Let's see, I would recommend Edgin. Some say he goes through materials. Yeah. I did take Edgin. He goes through some of the materials a bit fast. But definitely self-studying is a good portion of especially the higher level classes. You're going to be learning in lecture, of course, but it does come down to repetition, self-studying on your end. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and move on.
Another fun course that you will take is mechanics. So this is one of the other readout classes you will take. So topics include, there are 3 main topics: statics, materials, and then dynamics. So each with their subcategories. This class, unfortunately, there's no SCP workshop for this. So it does mean that you will need to be putting in a lot of effort to study on your own and using the homeworks efficiently to study the material. There are 2 professors for this course. Next fall, I believe, is Dr. Susu Wing, which isn't the best professor because their grading scale is kind of difficult to work around. But I know a lot of us have taken it with Dr. Agrawal, who's an absolutely amazing professor, and I highly recommend you taking him. But he is only spring semester, so just be cautious of that. And if you do need like additional like help in understanding concepts, I know a lot of students also use Jeff Hansen YouTube channel to understand that. And also, again, internet is your friend to understand the concepts. Dr. Agrawal offers office hours regularly. He even offered it during the break for us. And so use that to get questions answered regarding topics that he's gone over during lecture, or like getting help for the homework. Like he goes over the homework with you if you at least ask. So just make sure to use that to your advantage.
I had mechanics. I was lucky to have Agrawal. Biggest thing is, I would say, if you have time, because I know some people work and stuff, do definitely go to those office hours, because you go through a lot of problems, and like I feel like the only way to really get good at this class is drilling and killing. Like do problems. don't just do the homework, although some of the problems will take a while. Sometimes just go to the netset sample down and do it, because you'll get like really, really good. I remember getting like 40 stats on the first test and going like, oh bro, I suck. And then like pulling a 90s on the other one. So haha. So I got an A- in the class at the end. So that's gonna help you a lot, but I did a lot of problems. It does help that I do enjoy mechanics a lot. The other thing that I was gonna say is, since it's a problem solving class, Agrawal implements it now. But what we started doing during the middle that really, really helped me like do better at this class is, whenever you get a problem, break it down into categories, like make this a logical like process. This is the same people, I guess if you get to physics 1 and 2, this is the same problem that a lot of people have. They jump in the thing, try to start jotting down equations. Dude, do a free body diagram first. Like, free body diagrams are your best friends. If you don't do it, you're screwed, because you don't know what the frame of reference you're working with. But other than that, it's like, let's say you get a 2 or 3D problem. That's so different. There's like crazy error methods, like that's completely different stuff. So I would just bullet point like 2D, 3D. I would like, if I'm giving these variables, I would just write them all in a list, because it's so much easier to see like what from the class you need to apply once you're like, oh, I have these variables and it's a 2D problem and it's a dynamics or it's a statics problem, etc. You will know sort of like, okay, I might need to use this set of formulas versus this other set of formulas, and I need to do this or that. So please be really organized when you're solving problems, like really break it down into a method. It's gonna save your butt so much time, and it's really, really gonna help you do things better. I understand some people like to go in and try to solve the problem. Break it down into categories, know what you're working with, and draw free body diagrams. For the love of God, like how many people don't draw free body diagrams? It's frustrating, because I had to help a lot of my friends. I was just wanting to slap them because they don't do it. Do a free body diagram, break it down by categories. I think it's a pretty easy class after you start getting some examples going. It's just problem solving. It's really, really fun.
Like Carvalho said, all of his exams, or when, I don't know if I got lucky during COVID or whatever, but a lot of his exams were very representative of the practice problems he gave, and he gave tons. So as long as you do all the practice problems, you won't see anything that's incredibly new in the exam. You'll get used to figuring out how to think about it. And like Rahalia said, planning is your best friend. Don't just go straight into it. Plan as much as you can. It'll help, I promise.
All right, Techcom. If I'm not mistaken, this is going to be one of the last general engineering classes, if not the last, you're going to take. So this, the last one you'll have with civies and electricals and all that. Techcom is a pretty good class. Some people will write it off as just it's a easy blow off. You just got to do a bunch of grind work. But if you do take it seriously, it can really help you develop like yourself as like, hey, writing papers or making your resume better, talking in public speaking, one of the big things that this one focuses on. So it does implement a lot of things that I think that are more so social skills, that people are, it isn't just like hardcore STEM. It's a lot of like you presenting, you on paper. And I think that is really helpful for an engineer who, again, you're going to be working in teams. You're going to be advertising yourself. So do take this class seriously if you can. That's what a lot of it's going to be on, working on your resume, so on and so forth, what you can see here. Dr. Chad Wilson is one of the professors. I know sometimes they have different professors that you're assigned to, so you won't always get Dr. Chad Wilson, but he is the head professor, you could say, when it comes to this class. Yeah, you'll learn how to make a LinkedIn account. You'll often have a whole bunch of members that are making connections with one another, so you definitely will boost up that LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure everyone that's in engineering college here at least has LinkedIn. Yeah, so you'll be filming yourself for some presentations you'll have to give. And so I'd say just, it really focuses on you putting yourself out there, you talking a lot. And I can't underestimate how much that can really be helpful, especially later on in life when you start getting ready for interviews and doing all sorts of speaking work. So, and oh yeah, also people take it in the winter mini. people highly recommend taking it that time, because if you can take summer classes, you can take winter mini classes, definitely helps out with your spring, fall semester course loads. So that's what I'll wrap up on that.
Okay, so engineering statistics. I feel like this class is not that hard, but okay, so for this class, it's basically you learn more about basic concepts of probability, discrete and continuous probability distributions, and also like just about statistics in general. And what do you expect on the class is that sometimes you have weekly homeworks, or it's like bi-weekly. You have 2 midterms and a final. And for me, I took the class last semester with Dr. Feng, and she's a really good professor. Like her lectures are really good and everything. So some tips for this class, I will say that always try to attend the class. And if you're not able to attend class for any reason, I will say, I'm not sure if she's gonna still post her lectures online, but try to watch all her lectures. And also like before each test, I rewatch all the lectures. And then for the test, I will make sure to rework all the problems of the homeworks. And the professor, I remember that she mentioned like before every test, like whenever you get assigned a homework, like let's say like you have like from the book, you have to do problem 1, 2, 3 or something like that. I mean, well, 2 and 4, okay. So you have to do problem 1 and like 3 for review for the test and to get more practice and be prepared for each test. And also I will say that make sure to create a formula sheet like in advance during each class, because there are a lot of formulas that you need to understand and like actually know how to use them for each problem and kind of like play around with each formula. So just make sure that you get every concept in class. And also she didn't have office hours, but you can email her if you have any doubts, and she was like really quick.
All right, so QFES. So now we're really getting into the junior level BME classes. And as we progress into some of the other ones, these are really when you truly start to feel like I am a BME major and I'm taking specific classes for me. QFES is a really good class, just in general, right? But especially if you're a if you're really keen on biology subjects, you kind of have the hang of how to study for those classes. It's a lot of memorization, sure, but definitely understanding the body systems. It is really helpful, especially pre-meds. If you're pre-med, pre-health, this is a big class for you to try to understand. Okay, so you're going to go over all the different body systems. You won't do all of them. You won't do integumentary, reproductive, GI, but you'll do some of the hard-hitting ones here. What to expect: attend classes. There's going to be 3 exams. Now, Dr. Rowe traditionally is the one who always hosts this class. I'm certain she'll be doing it. I don't know how long, but for certain, perhaps by the time you're taking it, she'll be the one teaching this. So the way that she structures it, 3 exams, they're non-cumulative. So you just prepare for whatever system you're learning in that time period. And then she does offer a extra credit additional report that you can do where you talk about a disease over something that's related to one of the systems discussed. Any kind of extra credit opportunity, highly recommend. You know, the folks were talking about the super project earlier, it really does get you to apply yourself a little bit extra. And especially here, it will replace one of your other exams grade wise. So definitely take it. Some tips here. So Dr. Rowe had me do a recording for future QFES students. So I'll go ahead and keep that linked right there in that YouTube URL. I'll talk about what I kind of talk about a little bit here. Studying, very important. Try to study at least like maybe a week in advance if you can. I know we're all very time busy, but definitely if you can, do the study guides. It helps to read like biology books and so forth, Like I still sometimes refer to my old biology book or my genetics book. You don't have to. Definitely though, study guides, she gives you that opportunity, take it. Any kind of open notes or any kind of cheat sheets, take it. Take that seriously. But yeah.
I'm just gonna add also, if like this is a great class if you are thinking of taking Mohan's Intro to Diseases later, like don't blow it off. I think it's really fun. I'm taking it right now. But also it's like I took Intro to Diseases before this when I petitioned it, but now that I'm going through like cardiovascular system, etc., that way I didn't have to look like oh dumb when he was explaining how the blood flow, and I was like, oh, this is new, like you know. So then you can ask better questions and have a better experience with some other classes that might have this as a prereq or something. It seems easy for now, but we'll see.
Shanzay?
It's loud. Okay, yes. There's 3 different, it's not bad at all. There's 3 different assignments or lab reports you're going to have to write, and they're big lab reports. They will end up being about 10 pages or so. Rahali wrote like 20 for the last one. I don't know how, but he got a good grade. So, I mean, the more detail you add, it's better. Yes, electroencephalogram and electrocardiogram and electromyography. They take you to the lab. So what they do is basically for it's only 3 times a week. So even though it has like on your schedule, it'll show, oh, it's every week from this time to this time, like 4 hours. It's not, it's only 3 times a week, and the TA will reach out to you and send an email when you have to come in and everything. 3 times a semester, sorry. 3 times a semester. It's only 3 times a semester, and the TA will reach out to you and let you know when you have to come in and everything, and then they'll take you to a lab, and then they'll tell you all about the lab and everything. They'll help you like get the information you need to write the report. For the first one, they just told us how to like run the ECG code. Sorry, the EEG code. They told you how to run the code, and then you still have to like check the code at home and like run it, and then they gave you the data. For the second one, you don't need a code at all. They're just going to give you diagrams, and then you have to talk about that. And for the third one, apparently you're going to have to code a little bit, but it'll be fine because they'll like give you everything you need. Make sure you write lab reports like how you wrote them in. Like the format is going to be like introduction, discussion, results, conclusion, and things like that. But it will be in like 3rd-person POV. It has to be technical writing. Make sure that you write it all scientific-y and stuff. But it's like easy. You just need time to do it. Make sure you have like a good block of like 5-6 hours to do it. You might even take longer for the next ones, for the last 2. But yeah, it'll be fine. And you can like talk to other people. So don't be afraid of collaborating or like asking people questions if you don't understand how to like read the graphs or whatever. But yeah, it'll be okay.
Overall, it's a very straightforward course because they do give you a rubric of like things to include. And as long as you follow that closely, you should be completely fine for this course.
Overall, your best friend is not procrastinating. That's the thing. Just don't procrastinate. Otherwise, you're going to be crying the night before your lab report. That, and also like think of things like an engineer. I don't know, like don't overcomplicate it. Analyze and then say, this is what I think. It's a lab. Oops.
So for biothermodynamics, I had Agliamov, and at the beginning of the semester, he joked, he was like, I don't know why there's a bio, it's just thermodynamics. So if you guys have taken Gen Chem already, the like Gibbs free energy, partial pressures of gases, that kind of thing, it's essentially just breaking that down a little bit more. So you're going to see some new like concepts, some new like chemistry laws that you haven't seen before. You're going to have to work a little bit more with like the Gibbs free energy equation and all of that. Overall, this class is pretty straightforward. Make sure you're showing up to class, paying attention, asking questions. I haven't had Laren, I know for a while, Laren was the only one that taught this. And I think my semester was the first time Aglimov taught it, but it seems like he's going to be teaching it along with Laren from now on. So I can't speak for Laren, but Aglimov was very receptive to questions during the lecture. He does lecture very quickly, so if you need him to slow down, you have to let him know. Because if nobody says anything, he'll just go to the next slide. So there's that. Exam-wise, if I remember correctly, the exams are the only grades. So if I don't remember if there's 3 or 4. Yeah, the homeworks are going to be extra credit, but like grade-wise, at least when I took it, it was the only grade. So the exams are going to look just like the homeworks. If you're showing up to class, paying attention, asking questions, and then doing the homeworks when you get back. Or if you're like me, don't do it right before the exam. Don't be me. That was a little difficult. Don't do that. Pace yourself a little bit. But if you can do the homeworks, you can do the exams. So don't stress too much about it. And the homeworks are going to be extra credit. So even more reason to be doing them. Yeah, overall, pretty straightforward class. Just make sure you're there. Make sure you do the homeworks, and the exams will be just fine.
Oh, also for biothermo, the class before the exam, he always has a practice session where he'll have lots of questions for you. And then he uploads the slides to everything so you can go back and look at the questions and like solve them, resolve them, whatever. But yeah, you get a lot of questions, attend those, practice. You just have to like make sure you can do the math.
Okay, this one's a little weird. So numerical analysis, basically what it is you spend the class learning about the different mathematical ways that people do analysis on sets of data. And so in lecture, what he's going to do is show you like different ways of manipulating matrices, different ways of visualizing data, that kind of thing. And there are very few grades in this class. There are going to be 2 homeworks and an exam that's worth 50%. And it's scary. It's very nerve-wracking. But if you're showing up to class, make sure you're paying attention, because essentially like what he does on the board is exactly what your final is going to look like. One of the reasons it's important that you pay attention is because your practices are going to be coding. It's going to be MATLAB. So the 2 homeworks that he's going to have you submit, those will be MATLAB, but the final exam is a written exam. So it's just going to be like the math. The final exam will look like exactly like the practice problems that he does on the board, just with the numbers changed up. So if you're paying attention, make sure you're taking good notes, make sure you're understanding how he's solving each problem. You will be fine. Like the final is not difficult. You just have to make sure that you're like paying attention when he's talking. Tips wise, if you have your eMath notes, go over them because it's going to help. Like he will re-explain the things that you've done in eMath. So there's a couple things like eigenvectors, eigenvalues, how to do row reduction, that kind of thing. If you go in to the class knowing that, it's going to be like a little bit easier. Honestly, like some of the lectures are going to be a little boring if you like absolutely definitely know how to do that. But if you have your eMath notes and you're not like confident with it, just run them through real quick. He will re-explain it. So don't worry about that too much if you don't have your eMath notes. Tip number 2, I've already said it, but pay attention. Like I said, the final exam, it's a lot. Like it's 50%, seems like really scary. It's very nerve-wracking, but the exam will look like exactly what he's doing on the board. So just make sure you're understanding what he's doing on the board and you will be fine. Because on the board, he's going to do lots of practice questions. I don't believe he has any homeworks. He didn't in my course outside of like the MATLAB homeworks, the two that you're gonna submit there. He's not gonna give you like homework questions or anything like that to just practice on your own. So it's a matter of just showing up to class, paying attention to the problems. If you do that, you will be fine.
Okay, so now this is Capstone. This is typically the class that you take the year before you graduate. So I'm sure everybody's heard about this class before, but basically, as an engineering student at U of H, before you graduate, you need to do, and this is similar to a lot of universities, you are to do a group project over the course of 2 semesters that will result in a engineering product that solves some problem. So, for us, it's a like medicinal, like biomedical problem. So you do it in groups of 4. It is necessary to do it as a group project. You can't get out of that. Basically, what happens is you start the class. I would recommend like just kind of knowing your group of 4 before you get in. But just know who's taking the class with you, basically. So you start the class pretty much right away. They're going to ask you, submit who's in your group. I know it seems intimidating to sort of come up with a project from scratch, but honestly, they gave us a list of about like maybe 12 to 14 projects that professors in our department, or like the professor that I'm working with right now, he's actually from the College of Technology. They sort of propose these projects. Some of them, like I know Martin's going to talk after me, he is actually doing a project that previous groups have worked on. But by all means, like you can also propose your own project. I'm just saying, like, if that's something that really intimidates you, like for me, I was like, how are any of us going to think of a project? Like I kind of felt like I knew nothing about nothing going into it. Don't worry, like there's projects that you can pick up. So yeah, from there you have your group, you choose your project, and you just kind of keep going. There's different things that happen throughout the class. Sometimes the Dr. Schultz, who is the man that runs the class, Dr. Chen is there too, though. He will have a guest speaker, usually somebody from the industry, just kind of speaking on their experience. I don't know if you guys remember our general meeting with Anne from Bio Houston. She was one of our speakers for Capstone. So there's people like that. Sometimes class time is having like a 10-minute meeting with Dr. Schultz to sort of give an update of where your project is. Every week you will have to turn in like a small report that explains what you did that week, the problems you ran into, what you plan on doing next week. Overall, it's, from what I understand, the industry is like, you are sort of on your own. Obviously you have a faculty mentor, but for the most part, the troubleshooting is up to you. The planning is up to you. You're constantly reporting to Dr. Schultz your progress. There's a midterm presentation and report, and then a final presentation and report at the end of each semester as well. So some tips, like I'm not saying you should just take the suggested projects, because we do have several projects this semester that weren't suggested, that these groups came up with them on their own, but definitely don't try to do something crazy like cure cancer. I mean, you have to work with everyone in your group schedule, so you're really not meeting like a full-time job. Like you're probably going to realistically meet like 5 to 7 hours a week. Whenever you sign up for the lecture, it's gonna have you sign up for a lab. That's like not, I don't want to say it's not real, but that's like to make sure you have a protected 3 hours in your week. Like you can't come back to Dr. Schultz and be like, well, none of us have time to meet during the week, because you have at least that 3 hours. You don't necessarily have to meet with your group at that time. If you don't want to meet on Fridays, whatever, like pick another time during the week to meet. And then again, like I would recommend taking it with some friends or people you know. Also, just a side note, this class is only offered fall, spring. I feel like some people know that, but some people also don't. If you're a semester behind, like if you have the prereqs to take Capstone in the fall, I would still do it. Because if you don't take it in the fall, you can't take Capstone 1 in the spring. Like you will have to wait another year. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. I don't know if Martin has anything to add. We'll go over like this is Capstone 1 with the start of the project. We'll go over Capstone 2 in like a couple slides.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak more on Capstone 2 then, because I think you pretty much overviewed what to expect with 1. There's a little bit more projects that you'll have in 1, a little bit more outside of your main project. But yeah, I'll get a little bit more into the differences with 2 in a bit. Okay, bioinstrumentation. Oh, this class here. So if you really loved circuits, this is your time to shine. This is the circuits class that is like BME based. I'd really first, I'm just going to start off straight off the bat. I'd really recommend just reviewing circuits. Like if you kept those notes, if you still have them, Dr. Dave's videos, I mean, his slides and all that stuff, like definitely the first half of bioinstrumentation is basically circuit analysis. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing because you've gone over some of this material before. There's no real frills. Some new concepts will be introduced. Like for example, we didn't ever cover capacitors in circuit analysis 1, I don't believe. So some new things will be there, but it is pretty much circuit analysis 1 till the midterm, which will be right in the middle of the semester, I believe. So yeah, again, concepts, NVM, MCM, Norton-Thevenin circuits, that sort of thing, superpositions. You won't use a calculator, but you also don't need one because they're pretty solvable just by simple numbers. Afterwards, it gets a lot more equipment focused. You'll start to learn about some of the higher applications of these circuits. So using them in amplifiers, you'll learn about amplifier structures, incorporating them in EEG, ECG readings. You'll touch up a little bit on binary, a little bit on analog and digital recording methods, and eventually you'll end with some pretty complex circuits, but it's presented pretty manageably. So yeah, Dr. NJ is the professor, and some last little bits of notes here. He added a Arduino activity when I took it. Hopefully he continues that in the upcoming bioinstrumentations. It's really fun. You get to program a little Arduino and a breadboard. You don't really do much of physical hands-on stuff in the lecture, but definitely that's lab territory. I guess last few notes here is just, it's going to be a little bit intensive, not horrible. It's doable. But don't scare yourself out. I do feel that by the time you get to bioinstrumentation, you've kind of proven yourself as a student. If you've done well, you've tackled a lot of other courses. It's challenging, but you've proven yourself, so you can do it.
The only a few tips that I would say that helped me succeed the bioinstrumentation exam is by doing a lot of repeating, doing the homework, and like really like sometimes Professor NJ will have like example for his lecture, so also like pay attention to that. And sometimes like I don't remember, but he would have some problem from the lab. Bioinstrumentation lab will be on the exam as well. Just yeah. So like, but mostly like just do the homework and you should be good for the exam.
If I'm not mistaken as well, is this course fall only?
Yes, so this is another course that you really need to be careful in making sure you sign up for. If you have a goal, like for me and like Martin and Quinn, we want to graduate in spring 2022. We had to take bioinstrumentation last semester. So that's really important. yeah, Dr. Andy is really nice. It's possible to fail this class, but if you try, I don't think it's you will fail if you don't try. But like, so it is a bummer if you fail, right? Because you would have to wait a whole year, but it's okay. You won't. So now the lab. So this is kind of like what you would expect. It just goes over it's an application of the material covered in lecture. This lab meets every other week, so it's not super intense. Like it's a 3-hour block of time and it's only every other week. So you do have, 2 weeks to write these lab reports, which also aren't super intense. I would say they're like a little bit easier than like the Orgo lab reports or the QFES lab reports in terms of like length. So basically what happens is you get your lab and you are given circuit diagrams, and then you are essentially told to make the circuit and like collect data. So my advice is, especially at the beginning, I personally, and I know this is the case for a lot of other people, had never actually worked with a breadboard and never realized the differences of, like, it's one thing to look at a circuit diagram and solve the circuit on paper. It's another thing to put that on a breadboard. It looks very different. And so while the first lab, in my opinion, was pretty easy, looking back, that like transition from paper to breadboard was really hard at first and took me a long time. So if you can, I know there's some people who've worked on our Go Baby Go project that maybe like have already had some experience with that, which is good. If you could somehow like just watch a couple of videos and learn how to do that beforehand, that would be really helpful. Personally, I was super disinterested in this lecture and lab. I'm more like interested in like the biological side of our degree, but for my capstone project, we actually use circuits. We bought a microcontroller and use it. We coded in Arduino. So this ended up being like super, super useful. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I mean, oh, another thing I wanted to say too was we talked about the QFES lab earlier and how like the QFES lab, in my opinion, is like super easy A, whatever, but like Dr. NJ will expect you to know those signals and like understand how to read them. So one of the bioinstrumentation labs, we like took our partner's heartbeat, and like you have to learn how to take that, like build a circuit to take that person's heartbeat and then look at the signal and understand it. He expects you to know how to read EEG signals. So even though the QFES lab is like super easy, you can't just do it and then dump that information. Like you have to keep it with you because it comes back in this lab. But this lab is really useful because you do learn how to apply stuff like that, like into real life and like build those actual circuits.
All right, so Capstone 2. I know we're running a little bit over an hour here. Thank you all for sticking along. We are going to get to a little bit more about mental health and the Q&A for any of y'all who have questions in a bit. So let's go ahead and just finish up the senior classes. So Capstone 2, pretty much like Capstone 1, I'm going to be completely honest with you. However, it's a lot more focused on your capstone project. There's not many other distractions. You'll have guest speakers every now and then. But some of the other work you'll do in Capstone 1, you're not working with that. You are getting this project done. So it's a little bit more, I don't want to say intensive, but you are going to be serious with getting your team's communication down. So I really want to emphasize, you do teamwork in a lot of your different courses. And so you get used to it by this point. You definitely get used to working in a team, but I cannot overexpress just how important it is to have good communication. You don't always have to become friends with your teammates, but it does help. So yeah, just really hone in on those team working skills. It really is an essential part of our major and the work you'll do afterwards. So that's pretty much what I'm going to say on Capstone 2. You'll deliver your project, you'll do a presentation, you'll have a poster board, which you've done some poster boards in prior classes. I know 1331 is one of them. But yeah, this is the end of your project here. So definitely teamwork. That's really important.
Basically, I don't have much to add for GNP, but yeah, you're gonna cover PCR, ELISA, a lot of gene editing, those stuff. So the class might be a little bit boring, but you know, the lab is really interesting for me. Like you get to like work on the result and see like the actual result. So it's the lab was more interesting for me.
I would say also about genomic and proteomic engineering is Ben, can you mute your? So this class is pretty like, I would say the reason the lab is maybe a little more interesting than lecture is because in the lecture, he basically just talks about experiments. He's like, you don't really learn about, it's not a genetics class. You learn how to study genetics and you learn how to study proteins. So he does talk a lot about just a lot of different experiments. Additionally, there's no exams. There's a paper. Don't wait. You might not remember this the next time you take it, but just try not to wait to write that paper. It's kind of long. It's a review paper. It's a lot of research. But yeah, it's really not that hard. It's just, especially if you're interested in this stuff, I think it's nice, but the accompanying lab is definitely helpful. And I think the lab is on the next slide.
I also forgot that we do have the 10-minute recap for GNP.
Oh yeah,
So
you have a midterm paper, a final project, and then he sort of goes down the list alphabetically, and like at one point you have to give a 10-minute recap based on like what he said the previous lecture. But it's really not that bad. So in the lab, again, you just apply what you learned in lecture. It's really nice because all you learn in lecture is the lab techniques. So the lab is, you do have groups in the lab. So it's partner-based work. They're really not that hard. We had like one pre-lab. The lab reports are pretty short. Again, this is run by Emikai and Waiakai plus your TA. At least for my TA, she's been pretty good about getting the grades back. The weekly reports aren't super long. They're not looking for a lot. They're just looking for you to understand the theory mostly. So yeah, the lab is also one of those labs that it doesn't go until the end of the semester. I think we have like one more lab next week and then we're done. So it does meet every week, but it's really not that bad. It's actually really nice. Okay, so that is the end of all of the required classes you're taking. Obviously, there's a lot of different electives, but now we just wanted to take maybe a couple minutes to talk about like mental health and burnout and sort of like resources on how to handle that.
Before we do, one more thing to add. So we did talk about those major like weed out classes. Speaking from experience, I don't recommend you taking more than 2 of those at the same time, because that again will lead to burnout if you don't manage that properly. So just an FYI.
Yeah, so like I think the first step to avoiding burnout and maintaining good mental health is to always just listen to your body. I know sometimes, especially in our degree, it's easy to kind of feel competitive about studying and stuff like that. But if you're tired, just go to sleep. If you're hungry, just eat. Like you really shouldn't treat those things as rewards for studying. You should just do them regardless of if you feel like you're done studying or not. Yeah, the next bullet point, you can't really make up sleep. That's I know people say that a lot. That's really not how your body works. So don't do that. Make sure you're eating good food, you know, getting your vitamins. If you take medication for mental health, I know sometimes it's easy to forget those. I don't I don't want to say don't, just don't forget. But like if you have a pill reminder or something, like obviously getting off of those meds can like disrupt your sort of way of life too. A lot of people, I don't think know this, but if you've been diagnosed with depression, that's actually recognized as a disability by the American Disabilities Act. So you can get accommodations for this if you feel like you need them. You obviously, you don't have to if you don't want to, but to get accommodations, you would just email the Student Center for Disabilities and they will show you how to apply for accommodations. You do have to provide proof of your diagnosis, but other than that, they'll kind of get you started on that. And also just can't be doing school all the time. You should definitely take some time for yourself. We live in a really big city. We don't live in a college town. There's a lot of stuff to do. So again, even if you feel like it's easy to feel like you always have stuff to do. While that is true, I think that you can allow yourself to take some time away from school. So speaking of resources to use, our campus does have CAPS. I know a lot of professors, like when they go over their syllabus, they just kind of like breeze through the CAPS section. But it is a pretty big like service. CAPS actually recently moved to the fancy like Health 2 building way over yonder, like by the rec center and stuff. There's lots of different people there, lots of different counselors there. They offer a lot of different resources. It's not just somewhere you go kind of like once. They offer a lot of workshops aimed at things that they think probably a lot of people are struggling with, like anxiety, depression. They do offer individual counseling if that's something that you feel like you need. Whenever you first go to CAPS, that you have kind of like an intake session where they kind of listen to your situation, like what you're going through, and then they suggest whatever of their resources that they can offer you. So if individual counseling is something that they do offer you, it's $5 a session. They will only offer you 5 sessions. So after that, they'll either suggest that you move on to a therapist that's outside of U of H, or if you only needed 5, like you're good to go. A lot of people have used these services. Again, it's a really, there's a lot of different people there, a lot of different people with master's degrees and doctorate degrees. Like your tuition pays their salary. So always remember that when you're using any kind of service at the university, but especially these services, they're really just here to help you. So, and there's a reason that they're there.
I just wanted to say a little bit about CAPS because personally I've had really good experiences with CAPS. Amanda mentioned the like kind of first initial session that you get where basically you just go in, I think they call it a triage. You go in and they ask you a couple of questions and then they kind of like give suggestions and tailor like specifically what services they think you should use. And as far as the workshops go, the workshop was kind of what was suggested to me. And I thought it was a really great workshop, kind of just like sit in a room with somebody that can like inform you about maybe aspects of anxiety or depression that you haven't thought about and teach you about different techniques. And it's a group thing. So there's like lots of people in the room with you who are going through exactly what you're going through. Sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking to speak up, but once one person speaks up, I think we can kind of all have been in that situation. Once someone speaks up, it's a little bit easier for everyone else to like kind of give their own feedback. It honestly, personally was just very helpful for me. I went to the anxiety one. It just gives you like a lot of techniques, things to think about, different ways of thinking about things that'll just kind of help you. Super informative, completely free, didn't have to pay anything. It took like a Thursday, I think, like 2 Thursdays, like maybe an hour of time. and it's extremely beneficial. So if anybody's kind of feeling hesitant, they're not sure what to expect, everybody there is super like easygoing, understanding, and very helpful.
Okay, last thing is burnout. So Amanda pretty much covered what I'm about to say, but just to reiterate, your health is the #1 priority, even as a student. So like making sure that you don't fall into burnout is very important. It's very hard to come out of burnout. It takes a lot of time. And so there's a few things that you can do for yourself in order to not or prevent burnout, I would say. So some things that have worked for me is like setting boundaries between things that you do. So school, extracurriculars, and time to yourself. Time to yourself is very important. So don't disregard that. Don't be continuously focusing on school. School is important, but still your health is #1. So have set locations and times of things that you have to do. So if you have schoolwork, dedicate that to doing that only at the library or some location that works for you. And then when you come home, that's time for yourself, something like that. So don't continuously work on school. You need time for yourself to relax and rest away from school. And again, self-care is very important. So making sure you're hydrating, you're socializing, and go touch grass. Like get some exercise and be outside, go like lay down in the sun or something. And again, you deserve to have fun even though you don't think you're doing well in class. I think that's very important. I learned that as well. So Wesley, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say, from personal experience, I also know that sometimes like the argument of like self-care is important, while like that is very, very important, just to understand like in general, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you like can't get out of like the mindset of like, oh, but like I need to work on school. Like, yeah, self-care is important, but I need to work on school. Also, something to think about is that if you burn yourself out, your grades will suffer. It's not just a matter of like, you know, like taking care of yourself is important, but also if that's not enough motivation for you, like also understand that doing well in school, it's important to take care of yourself for school too, because if you're not like mentally like healthy and you're burnt out of school, you're not going to do well. It's not going to be a good time. So like it's not necessarily also just like a completely separate thing. Like these two things go together. If you're like good with your mental health, you'll also be good with school. So for I just said that personally because like I know that sometimes that has helped me like kind of get out of the idea of like thinking of like self-care and like putting that off because I'm too focused on school. If you're focused on school, think about that too.
I was gonna add one more thing, but I forgot. So does anyone have any questions? I guess we can start with our Q&A.
Yeah, let's go ahead and have some Q&A time now.
I was going to say too, I know that we went a little bit over time. If you have a question and we don't get to it, you can always message us on GroupMe, especially me, Martin, and Quinn. Since we are graduating this semester, we've pretty much taken all the classes. So if you have a question about any of them, you can always reach out to us at another time. Cullen says, does anyone know for Cal 3 with Weber if the final exam replaces their lowest exam grade? He can't find it on the syllabus anywhere. I did not take it with Weber, nor do I remember Cal 3. So
I took it with Wes back in the day. I imagine they teach it similarly and they probably have similar rubrics. At least that I can remember. I don't think any of the, well, no, I don't know if they still do it anymore, but I think I remember some people talking about final exam replacing the lower grade. some professors have those in different classes. I don't know if anybody here has Weber that could maybe weigh in right now, because it's been a while since I've done Calc 3, but I do remember people talking about that. But I don't want to say anything concrete.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Colin, you might be able to just email him. Usually professors are pretty open to clarifying stuff like that. So
Give me a couple seconds and I can check that.
Thomas
Man.
says, does anyone have a recommendation for a good genetics professor?
I do, unless, did you take genetics, Amanda?
I didn't. My
Okay.
biology elective was neuroscience. So
So I took genetics 2 semesters ago with Dr. Kelleher and Dr. Leckvin. So it's a joint professor for the same class section. Their lectures are very straightforward. And as long as you go to class, like follow their lectures, I didn't need any other resources outside of that to understand the material and do well in class. So I think they were great professors. They were also very receptive to questions if you have any. I know this upcoming semester, though, they are not teaching this class. So I don't know if anyone else has recommendations on professors for genetics.
I'm checking to see who is teaching. Because I had a really great professor, but I do not know if she's teaching this class anymore.
I mean, I will say, like, I haven't taken genetics, but I had a lot of friends that did, and I didn't ever really hear any complaints. So I'm hoping that you can't really go wrong. It's one of those things where like all the professors are pretty good. So just
I do want to say genetics, really helpful class for a lot of BME classes, especially the ones that are more focused on not so much mathematical, electrical engineering stuff. Genetics is really helpful. So as somebody who took genetics and really liked it, you're going to see it a lot in our major. It will pop up quite a bit.
Yeah, Marcus said that when he took Cal 3, they replaced the final replaced one of his midterms. I took it with West too, and I'm pretty sure that's what we did. I don't think it was a special case because I took it with West like pre-COVID. So I think that was just always the case. And I'd imagine, I think that the Cal 3 professors usually maintain the same sort of like grading scale, if that makes sense. Not grading scale, but like they do the same thing with their final grades.
Oh, can I in one more time with genetics? Because I just saw the list of professors. Dr. Farmer, who's the one I took, is still teaching it. She's awesome. She makes lectures really enjoyable. She does biology. She does genetics. She is just great. Just wanted to throw that out there. I'm sure the others are good though. Turn to files. Let's see, with Cullen's question, 2 midterm exams and the finals. I'm not sure if that has changed. Maybe semesters.
I feel like that's what I had.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't really remember having a severe issue with Cal 3 or like anyone, not to like if you're struggling, like not to like minimize that, but I think you'll be okay. I don't really think that they changed that up a lot because calculus hasn't changed up a lot in the past couple centuries. So I think you'll be good. Thomas also asked for intro to mechanics. It's not a prereq. Yeah, I don't really remember it being a prereq for any of my classes. I would double check if it's a because the thing that I think a lot of people in our degree run into is not meeting the prereqs for QFES because QFES is a prereq for literally every bio-E class. Prereq is like the gateway to the rest of our major, like the last 2 years of classes. So yeah, if you know, you don't have to follow the degree plan to a T if you're kind of taking a lot of classes next fall and you want to wait, or you want to wait for Dr. Agarwal. Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. I don't really remember if there's still that rule where you don't have to meet with an advisor if you're like a junior and you have a GPA above a certain threshold. But also, like, these are good questions to ask your advisor, because I don't want to tell you that's okay and then it's not okay and then your graduation's delayed. So if you haven't had your meeting with Miss Boatwright yet, that's a good question for her, because she probably knows like all the different ways you can kind of rearrange the degree plan. I personally just followed it like almost exactly because it made me nervous not to. But I know a lot of people don't do that. So yeah, she's a good resource for questions like that.
Yeah. Another thing to add is that you can always, I don't know if mechanics is a prereq to any course. Again, check with Dr. Boat, or sorry, Miss Boatwright. But you can also petition courses. I don't think we covered that, but for QFES, it is a prereq for basically every single BioE specific course for your tracks.
So Quinn posted the QFES prereqs, and it is. So if you planned on taking QFES in the spring, that means that you need to take mechanics in the fall. Brendan's right, you can petition courses, but there's a reason that with mechanics, I don't really see why mechanics is a prereq for QFES, because they're very different sides of sort of like the spectrum of like what you learn. But in general, usually it is pretty important to take those classes in order. But yeah, just like a little warning, like warning about Capstone 1 and bioinstrumentation are only offered in the fall. QFES is also like, you need that really bad to do almost anything else in our degree. So make sure that you have all those classes covered in like a timely manner.
I will say, like, Agarwal is like really great. So if you can get him, I won't say like wait for him, but he was a really good professor, probably one of my top ones.
A minor. It is with minors. So like, for example, pre-meds, you're basically going to be doing a bio minor. I'm going to be completely honest with you. You're going to be doing a bio minor. But for others, chem, I know with chem, I think you only have to take 2 additional classes compared to what we're doing currently. Because you do not, contrary to popular belief, you do not need Orgo 2 for a chem minor. So I don't think it's one of the requirements when I was checking it. So I think it's physical chemistry and then one other class you have to take. But that's one of the more doable ones. Mathematics is another one I hear about too. That one, I think it might be 2 or 3 additional classes. I don't remember with mathematics if someone wants to step in.
I don't have a math minor, so I'm totally just talking about what I've heard. I think it might only be 1 extra class for a math minor. That might not be true. I will say with PChem though, the textbook, at least when I took it with Laren, the textbook for biothermodynamics is a PChem textbook. So like, it's not going to give you credit for physical chemistry, but if you do want to go ahead and pursue a chem minor, I'm imagining physical chemistry is going to be pretty similar to biothermodynamics. So you will probably be successful in that class. Some people think it's scary, but also they're not engineers. They're like probably chem minors or bio minor or chem majors and bio majors that take it. Yeah, it also, Marcus, just kind of depends on what your schedule looks like and like what classes you need. I know like you have to take all the classes that we talked about today, and then if you're not pre-med, you need 5 bio electives. If you are pre-med, you need 4 bio electives and 1 biology elective. Personally, I took up a minor like my sophomore year, and not that I regret it, but I will say when you get to your senior year and like all your buds are only in like Capstone and like one other class, and you're taking like 16 hours, it hurts like a little bit. I get that extra line on my degree, like on my diploma. So I don't know. I'm still debating on whether or not like I'm okay with that. My minor though added 5 classes to my, because I'm a philosophy minor. Like it added literally nothing to my degree. But like if you end up taking up like a chem minor or like a math minor or something, you know, that might be more doable. Just depends on what you want. I don't know. You could also just take classes that you're interested in. You don't necessarily have to do a minor. You could just take some random ones. Because I think at U of H, if you take more than 15 credit hours, like it costs the same. Like the more credit hours you add, or if you're in UH and 4, I think if you add more classes past 15 hours, they don't cost any extra. So